We in this bitch with Langston views, you ain't got the beauty in lane, nigga.
It's a top priority, but I've learned to let it come naturally. You know, you don't want to get the impression of it's like, you know, listen to my music, listen to my music, listen to my music. I used to be on that. Now it's like, it seems like more people are asking me about what's going on with the music than me pushing it out to them. You know, because right now the objective is not just to be a rapper.
I am prolific. I am gifted. Yeah.
I'm howling at the moon over you, 'cause it ended way too soon over you.
I guess I'm not over them lies they kept spreading. I guess I'm not wanting the fame of this pitting. Me gets my own people, them checks just ain't hitting. If currency then capture the wicked, that's magnetic. This phase is crucial cause the wolves and sheep clothes get wardrobe malfunctions, they repairers need robes. But the fits freak an intent, that shady imprint. They spread them vibes just like an incense. Aroma sits with a type of smell that rings a bell when people think of fingernails.
That's what it is. That's what it is. So what song we about to record now?
You about to do Never Settle.
A little background on that.
So honestly, I just was in the mindset of not trying to necessarily prove people wrong, but to understand my value as an artist and as a man, and to show people like, hey, if somebody's saying something about you negative, it doesn't matter because you're never going to settle. You know, you're going to always strive to be better, always try to do more than what you're doing. You don't have to be perfect, but at the same time, you have to always be looking to elevate this type of way. And as long as you're doing that, you're fine. But when people see that, they're going to recognize that. And even though they don't tell you that they recognize that, it's still going to be something that's on their mind. So your elevation, it may disturb them, but that doesn't matter because you got to keep going despite what they feel about you, what they say about you. You know, you should be like a horse. You know, when you're racing, you're looking at this direction. Everything else is blocking you because there's walls in between you. You know, and Farnsworth Bentley, he came to my school and talked about that, and he mentioned how you have to be like a racehorse in life. You got to be looking straight. Everything beside you should be like these little bricks right here, these little boundaries right here. This is what you see on both sides, and then all you can see in the front is just the finish line. And that's the goal, and you just keep running as fast as you can until your legs give out, until your arms give out, and once you make it there, you make it there. So that's the message.
I guess I'm not over them lies they kept spreading. I guess I'm not wanting the fame if it's pitting. Me gets my own people, them checks just ain't hitting. If currency then capture the wicked, that's magnetic. Cause they drawn to it and becoming pawns to it. Is you all clueless, chessboard anchors all stupid? Is we all seeing clearly if the fog moving in the direction where it's blocking God's protection?
That was solid, but I messed up on certain words, so I'll do the taking again.
I guess I'm not over them lies they kept spreading. I guess I'm not wanting the fame if it's pitting. Me gets my own people, them checks just ain't hitting. If currency then capture the wicked, that's magnetic. Cause they drawn to it and becoming pawns to it. Is you all clueless, chessboard campers all stupid? Is we all seeing clearly if the fog moving in the direction where it's blocking God's protection?
Much better. That's dope. We definitely gotta do ins and outs for that before we jump to the next parts.
They kept spreading. That's magnetic.
I delegated authority, but they didn't embrace it. They wanted titles and worship idols, that's copy and pasted. Extra work was to keep them active, but they couldn't take it, and it resorted to sipping 40s. He sipped and they wasted was indication of lost time. Standing on corners with not a care when the world really, but karma was on them like coffee stain. Jazzy Bells was sweating them, wanting to get a piece of the fast money. View them as martyrs that view the scholars as losers, but they ain't beggars and choosers. If you viewing the temples, make sure you study the rubric, cause the format's changing and probably later than sooner, but stay ahead of the game, baby. It's catching up to us. When you teaching the man to fish, don't really mean using the false bait. Just demonstrate the traits of a ruler that's exercising democracy, but also a student of communism and lyricism like Jada and Luda. Yeah.
Musically, what was one of the hardest adaptations that you had to adapt to just to continue making music on the levels that you create music on?
Stepping out of my comfort zone and realizing that music is not just about being a great freestyler, but about being able to piece it all together. You know, it's a very few rappers that have the whole package. Some can just be lyrical, and some could just do club songs. You know, when you can do both, I feel like that's the real power. But it took me a while to realize that, because at a certain point, I was just in laser-like mode. I was just focused on just lyrics, or focused on just doing something catchy in the club wise. But when I realized that I can actually do both, if I focused on both and did it effectively, that would be the best thing to do. Aroma sits with a type of smell that rings a bell when people think of fingernails. That the pots are steaming well, but cooking up some demon shells. Type of pasta for pasta in the foods that's eating well. They regurgitate statistics but can't comprehend themselves. Pretty sad, cause the smartest be the dumbest when they fail the test. Call self-reflection even with the cheat sheets. Common sense and bricks meet, they hit that wall, it gets deep. Idiots get more clout and intellects get tuned out. Yes.
Okay.
Was on them, like coffee staining the Jazzy Bells, sweating them, wanting to get a piece of the fast money. They view them as martyrs, view the scholars as losers, but they ain't beggars and choosers. If you viewing the temples, make sure you study the rubric, cause the format's changing and probably later than student, but stutter. Oh, fuck. Mess it up. Nah. Do it again. Okay. In the direction where it's blocking God's protection. I delegated authority, but they. Right back. In the direction where it's blocking God's protection. I delegated authority, but they didn't embrace it. They wanted titles and worship idols, that's copy and pasted. Extra work was to keep them active, but they couldn't take it, and they resorted to sipping 40s. Except that they wasted was indication of lost time. Standing on corners, not a care when the world really, but karma was on them like coffee staining the Jazzy Bells, sweating them, wanting to get a piece of the fast money. They view them as martyrs, view the scholars as losers, but they ain't beggars and choosers. If you viewing the temples, make sure you study the rubric, cause the format's changing and probably later than sooner, but stay ahead of the game, baby. It's catching up to us. When you teaching the man to fish, don't really mean using the false bait. Just demonstrate the traits of a ruler that's exercising democracy, but also a student of communism and lyricism like Jada and Luda.
That was dope. We'll just do one more take and then that'll be it. But that's a high keeper for sure. I delegated authority, but they didn't embrace it. They wanted titles and worship idols, that's copy and pasted. Extra work was to keep them active, but they couldn't take it, and they resorted to sipping 40s. Except that they wasted was indication of lost time. Standing on corners, not a care when the world really, but karma was on them like coffee staining the Jazzy Bells, sweating them, wanting to get a piece of the fast money. They view them as martyrs, view the scholars as losers, but they ain't beggars and choosers. If you viewing the temples, make sure you study the rubric, cause the format's changing and probably later than sooner, but stay ahead of the game, baby. It's catching up to us. When you teaching the man to fish, don't really mean using the false bait. Just demonstrate the traits of a ruler that's exercising democracy, but also a student of communism and lyricism like Jada and Luda. Yeah.
How have your music impacted the people?
I think it's impacted them in a great way, man. I think people have gotten to see a different side of me, and they may be used to, either Jared at work or Jared somewhere else, but they may be a little bit shocked when they find out that I have the ability to make music and just be very lyrical. I think from a complexity standpoint, it's raised a lot of eyebrows in a good way. People are realizing like, man, he's using his brain to make people dance, and that's something that a lot of people can't do. So I think the main thing is that they're impressed by the ability of me using my brain to put out not only great content, but put out content that's going to be, life changing, not just for this generation, but for future generations. If they look back on IAMPROLIFIK, they can say that, okay, even though it's 2045, I can look back on 2025 and be like, man, this was a vibe. They may have been dealing with certain things that are traumatic and tragic, the crashes and all the deaths that come from the senseless, but they can also say that, he was still enjoying his life, putting out good content, and spending time with his family and friends and vibing to whatever music that he was listening to at the time. They'll go back and listen to that music and my music, and say that this is what was on his mind at the age of 33. So that's what I want people to really think about when they think about me.